Happy Tuesday, everybody. Tony Gonzalez coming to you with another episode of GarageCast. This week, we are interviewing Dan Gussoff. Gus is the owner-operator of Emerald Coast Harley-Davidson in Destin, Florida. He has a great story that started in Detroit, Michigan, working in Michigan for some years, working down in Florida. He gained some ownership a few years back in Emerald Coast, and now he runs a phenomenal world-class dealership. He also got some surprise information on how to run a tractor store as well. Stay tuned for Gus Gussoff on this week's GarageCast. This is a show for anybody that has something that they want to say. It's going to be full of people with a lot of energy, CEOs, OEMs, vendors.
Best practice ideas in this industry and of neighboring industries.
We're talking to people that are on the cutting edge of processes, management.
Serial entrepreneurs, authors. We really have a feast of all different types of senior level people.
A cornucopia, as it were.
A plethora, maybe. Grab a pen, grab a cup of coffee, and have a seat. Start writing. This is GarageCast.
Yeah, so there, we don't need an intro past that. Welcome to GarageCast. We got this going on. Dantzler's turning his fan off for the 950th time. You'd think he would actually have those off when we started. And now Gus is already here breaking balls. So I like this. Everybody listening, this is Gus. Gus, this is everybody.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
So Dan Gussoff, which nobody calls him Dan Gussoff, and if you saw the size of this man, you wouldn't call him Dan either. His name is Gus, last name Gussoff. Man, I've known Gus for a long time, over 10 years, and Sam has
20
as well.
years. 10 years.
He knows you.
I haven't even seen you in almost 10 years.
Yeah.
It's been way past 10
That's
years.
true.
I was going to say, he knows you so well, he doesn't ever visit.
Yeah, I've known you since you didn't have a big old gray beard like that, when it was just kind of stubbly and cool looking. Now it's just like you're the grumpy old Harley beard guy.
I'm practicing for my my next career as a pirate, so we'll be good to go.
I love it, man.
What you're doing is looking quite dangerous when you have to show up at school for your daughter just to make sure those boys know who you are. That's what you're pulling off right now.
I ain't scared to have to slap a 12-year-old boy around. He gets out of line with my daughter.
Amen.
No shame here.
Tony, remember that with your two hooligans. Just remember, there's two of us here would just beat the hell out of your kids if we have to.
I have told my boys that just that, like, hey, be careful what you're doing out there because there's consequences. But hey, guys, we live in a world where this was the way it was for us. You and I both know that we're not doing anything anymore because you go straight to jail anymore. You freak people out. You be on the news.
Yeah.
Hurt feelings, but
hurt hamstring, I'll blow a leg out or something. What are you talking about?
Yeah, for sure.
Bro, I had to fix something in the office and I had to get one of the younger guys. I'm like, yeah, I had my knee replaced in January. My other knee I got to get done in January. And I'm like, yeah, my latter days are over, man. I need you to shimmy up this ladder for me. It's a sad state of affairs.
Hey, man, dual knee replacement leads me into the first question. Dual knee replacement leads me into, tell us about growing up in Michigan as a multi-sport athlete, son of a Detroit fireman, and generally being just a total badass. Let's talk about early days, Gus.
Man, I grew up in the city in Detroit. As you know, my dad was a Detroit firefighter and retired as the senior chief of firefighting operations in the city. Worked for the city for 40 years. So if you worked in the city, you had to live in the city. So we grew up not in the hood, but in Detroit. And man, we had a blue collar family, and you don't realize things that your parents did for you until you become a parent. And I know both of you guys have experienced that, man, and the sacrifices that my folks made for us. And we didn't know any different. My parents have been married 60 years, and they laid a great foundation for what a good family life should look like and hard work. But I got my share of scraps, and, we didn't, there wasn't a day where we weren't doing something. And I played football and baseball and tried every other sport, and my brother and I used to fight on my older brother Derek. We'd fight daily. Every basketball game turned into a full-blown fist fight. We'd play strikeout, and I'd hit him in the middle of the back with the ball, and he'd chase me with the bat. Just typical shit in the 70s that kids did, man. So yeah, man, it was great, and went to college and played football in college at Northwood, and had a great experience, played baseball too. And you know, a lot of those, both of you guys are athletes. A lot of those things that you learn in sports that are such a part of teamwork are applicable to what we do in our professional lives. So yeah, man, whenever I'm talking with my team, there's always a lot of sports metaphors and having those conversations. So great childhood growing up, man. My parents were awesome. And, you know, today they're 80 years old and still rolling, man. I talk to my folks every day, and my brother's a Detroit fireman now. He's a lieutenant.
Yep.
You know, he's got 20 plus years on the job, and my other brother works he was the one with the big brain. He's like, I don't even know what the hell he does. Something with computers or I don't know. Big brain stuff.
Gus, you're talking about having a brother and just throwing a baseball square at his back, which I get it, man, because my older brother, we used to torment each other. You know, I'd go in the room and punch him and then run into my room, and I hear footsteps outside. I slam the door and close it and lock it, and then I think he was gone, and I'd open the door, and I remember cracking it open just a little bit so I could peek out, and he kicked it, and he just split my forehead wide open, laughing all the time. You know, it's just, I know those fights.
My older brother had the worst temper. And I remember he chased me with the bat, and if he would have caught me, he would have hit me with it. No doubt. No question about it. He would have hit me with the bat. So he pursues firefighting. Your dad's a firefighter. You don't go after firefighting. You don't go after the sports, but you pursue power sports. How does that happen? Man, I've always had a love affair with Harley specifically. I remember when I was a kid, my first time I saw a dude on a Harley, and the feeling I had, I was probably 6 or 7 years old, and he pulled up next to the car at a stoplight, and I could feel the bike, right? And this was probably if I was 6, that was 1978-ish. So picture a crusty bearded biker in 1978 pulls up on some shovelhead, and you can feel the bike. I could feel it. And I'm stuck to the window like this, looking out, and he looks over at me, gives me a thumbs up, and hammers the gas and takes off, man. And I was just hooked from that moment. I just had this love affair with Harley, and it still carries on today. You know, I'm 52 now. So, when I got out of school, I started working at a boat dealership, washing boats and cleaning bathrooms, and then went over to the Harley store. The first guy I worked for, both of you guys probably remember, old Lemco guy. His name was Roy Nicholson, and I worked at American Harley. I drove from Detroit to Ann Arbor, and I remember talking to Roy and him telling me, man, I worked in some sales and marketing job when I got out of college, and it sucked and I hated it. And he's like, how much money do you make? And I said, I make $28,000 or whatever it was. And he's like, you can probably make that selling bikes. And this was in 96 full time. I went to work there full time in 1996. And I'm like, let's go. I'm in. So I just started selling bikes. He sent me down the street to train at Nicholson's, which was their power sports store. Because the Harley store in the middle part of the 90s didn't look like they look today. But the power sports store where they carried everything. So I went down there and I trained with the hell is the guy's name? I can't remember his name, but I spent like 2 weeks down there learning the sales process. And then when we got back to the Harley store, at that time with Lemco, you would fill out your worksheet on the Friday or Saturday afternoon and then fax it in with your greets and all that stuff. And then on Monday morning, came back, there'd be a fax there with rankings, right? You guys remember?
Sure.
So the foundational part of my sales career started with Roy Nicholson and talking about meeting and greeting and probing and presenting and keeping track of all that. And it didn't, I'm a 22-year-old kid. I'm just running. And Roy had the best analogy. When I first started selling bikes, it took me a little bit to gain some traction. And I'm talking to Roy, and Roy was just a good old country boy. He always had a clipboard, and he's always taking inventory. And I never understood why. Now it's crystal clear. That's where all the cash is tied up in your inventory. So he'd have a clipboard, and he's counting every day. And I'm talking to him a million miles an hour, and he's not looking at me, but he's listening. And Roy got to know me pretty well, and I'm like, man, I can't get a bike sale. I can't do this. I'm not achieving, you know, and I'm an athlete. I understand hard work equals success. And so I'm like, what am I not doing? And Roy says to me, he's like, man, what'd you do on Saturday night? And he knew full well what I did. I went to the country bar and I was trying to find a girl, right? That's what we did in the early 20s. And he's like, well, what the first girl you asked say? I'm like, she blew me off and told me to pound sand. He's like, well, what'd you do then? I'm like, I asked another one. And he's like, how'd that go? I crashed and burned. And then he's like, what'd you do after that? So we did this up to like 6 or 7. And then finally it happened. And he's like, selling bikes is just like that. You just got to keep asking. You just got to keep asking, keep asking, keep asking. And I still use that analogy with sales Jay when they're struggling. I'm like, man, you just got to keep asking. And it's, you know, it's like making wine. You pour all these grapes in a funnel and a little bit of wine trickles out of the bottom. So that stuck with me and has stuck with me throughout my whole career about our industry. Like, man, you can't have 3 greets on a Saturday and expect to sell 3 bikes. It just doesn't work that way. So that was great. That was a great learning lesson for me early in my career.
So go ahead, Sam.
No, I'm just funny. I'm sitting here thinking like you're still using that today. I think it's a great lesson, but that implies that the youth of today, the boys/men of today, actually know or try to attempt to talk to a girl, much less 6 strikeouts every single night, right? I don't know how that happens.
Well, we'll talk about this in a little bit down the road, but like how we as business leaders have had to change our leadership structure to have the same effect with, the next generation of people. Because the way that the 3 of us all learned isn't necessary. I think some of those values and some of those characteristics are applicable, but the way we describe them and present them to that younger generation has got to be in a different manner if we want to get the same result.
Yeah, you're 100% correct on that. The 3 of us are gonna skid into our graves looking like a B-29 coming back from a mission in Europe, dude. Holes and burn marks everywhere from all the rejection that you had to face, which hey man, it made you resilient and okay, I'll go grab another beer then and I'll figure this out next time, right? And yeah. I do. We're gonna get to that, Gus. We're gonna get to that. But yeah. I want you to keep going. So Nicholson's. Then what?
Yeah. So I worked at American Harley, and I worked there for a couple years, and then I was driving from Detroit to Ann Arbor, which was probably a 35-mile drive each way, and this big shiny new store opens 15 minutes from my house called Motown Harley-Davidson. So I go down to Motown and got a picture. American Harley at that time used to be I think it was originally like a small car dealership, maybe for one of the foreign markets. It was probably built in the 80s, so maybe it was 6,000 or 8,000 square feet. It wasn't a big facility, what most of the Harley stores look like in the 90s. And then Motown opens, which is a quarter of the distance that American is from my house, and it's a big shiny new store. And so I end up going to work at Motown Harley, and I worked for a guy named Chaz Hastings. I don't know if you guys know Chaz, but he's been in the industry. He's not in the Harley business anymore, but he was pretty close to my age, maybe 5 or 6 years older than me. And he ran the store, and it was brand new, and it was shiny, and it was booming, and business was good. And there was all kinds of activities going on. So I ended up going to work there, and I worked there probably a year and a half or 2 years. I worked there the day it opened, and I had a ton of fun. And I was seeing this girl, and she wanted to move to Miami. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds cool. So Chaz, yeah, I'm from Detroit, man. Like Miami's like a whole other planet. So Chaz introduces me to the DM in South Florida, whose name's Lance Deming, and he still is a DM with Harley. And Lance set up an interview with me in Miami with the Peterson organization, and then he set up an interview with me in Fort Lauderdale. And at that time, Mr. Rossmeyer had just bought the Fort Lauderdale store, and Greg Cook was his partner there, and Greg was the operator. So I fly down in April. I fly down in April and I go meet with the Petersons, and it's at that time that store was maybe 2 or 3 years old. I think they had built that store in 97 and this was in 98. So I guess maybe it was less than 2 years old. And man, it looked like Miami Vice. They had neons and it was a beautiful facility. And I met with the folks there. Ace was the longtime general manager there, and they were great. And I'm like, man, this is my home, because this girl and I are going to move to Miami. And so the next day I go to Fort Lauderdale Harley, and at the time it was on 441 and Broward Boulevard. It was a dump. When I say a dump, it was a dump. And I go there on Monday and it was closed. I knew it was closed. I just want to go check it out. I'm like, man, and I'm coming from Motown Harley, which is a big shiny facility. Miami Harley, Peterson's North, nice, beautiful facility. And then I go to Fort Lauderdale and I'm like, this place is a dump. It's worse than the old store in Michigan that I worked at. But I got a meeting set up. So I go the next morning and I meet with Greg Cook. And Greg and I just had this instant bond, man. And so I end up going to work at Fort Lauderdale Harley. The girl and I break up. She doesn't even go, but I'm like, screw it. I'm going to Fort Lauderdale, man. This
Was
is
that
paradise.
because of Greg Cook? Just curious.
What, that we broke up?
Yes.
That I decided to move. No,
I could see him saying, "Oh yeah, you don't want to bring this
that's a whole
baggage
nother story
with you."
That's a whole nother story that I can't share in this forum. But anyways, I go and I had the world by the cojones, man. I had like $800 in the bank. I was ready to roll. My dad had co-signed for my new Ford truck that I was driving, and they're looking at me like, "You're doing what? Moving to Florida? You're not." And my dad's like, "You're not taking that truck. I signed for that." So I moved down there. I don't have a place to live. There's no internet, right? So I get a paper and I'm looking for apartments. I don't have a vehicle, but I had a job. So I had, like I said, I had $800, so I was good. Well, I get off the plane and I go to the elbow room, right? And it's like I had died and went to paradise right on Los Olas Boulevard. And I proceed to spend $300 of my $800 on Hawaiian shirts and all that shit. So now I'm down to $500. So I rent this week-to-week efficiency on my American Express card that was also in my dad's name. So I'm living in this efficiency week to week. I show up at work the next day. I take a taxi, and I'm talking to Greg, and I'm like, I don't have a vehicle, but I had a job. And Greg's like, well, we traded for this. I remember it was a 1989 Mazda 626, and it was so hot in May in Fort Lauderdale. I mean, it was hot. I'm sweating, and I get in this car, and I open the hood, and I check the oil, like the dipstick's burnt off. It's just a nub, right? So, but the air was ice cold. It blew ice cold air. It needed a wheel bearing, and Greg's like, it's $800 or whatever it is. And I'm like, well, can I make payments to you? So he financed me for the $800 Mazda 626, and we still laugh about that today. But I had a job. So I just went to work, man. I just went to work and was hustling my ass off and learning and making a whole bunch of mistakes. And Greg was a great mentor for me, because he ran at a pretty high rate of speed too. But he taught me how to be responsible and all those things. And within about 6 or 7 months, I was the sales manager at Fort Lauderdale Harley.
Damn.
And business back then was just like, it was so much different than it is today, obviously. But we were in this little tiny dump store selling bikes. I mean, hundreds of bikes. All used bikes, because our allocation was like 180 new bikes. Matter of fact, if somebody came in looking for a new bike at that time, you had to turn them over to this dude named Mike. Mike would write the order, because so the only thing we sold was used. Like my pay plan, I didn't get paid a penny on new bike sales. It was all used bikes. So we would have like 18 or 19 new bikes in inventory and 150 pre-owned bikes, and that's all we sold. and we'd move them in every day and out every day and pack them in storage containers in the back. And we had a dog that you had to let out at the end of the day, and he'd watch over the lot. It was just crazy, man. But it was an awesome time, and I learned so much, and forged some lifelong relationships there.
Gus, I was in a seat, a lucky seat, and I've been there a few times, in a lucky seat to see the right people getting the right opportunity. You're certainly one of those where, saw you when you were working in Detroit, and some of the issues you were facing with all the hard work that you were putting in, and I saw the frustrations, and I saw the ups, I saw the downs, and I can say myself that I've never been more pumped or happy for a guy than when you had that opportunity. And then it speaks to something that I've always been a firm believer in. There's a few of these people out there in the industry that are as badass as Greg Cook, who I can say you can point to certain people and say that person right there made a lot of millionaires. And why I say that is because they had theirs, they got theirs, they had enough. And at that point they decided, I'm going to pick the right people that are going to continue this legacy, and I'm going to set them up for success in the future. And it pumps me up to say that about Greg Cook. He is one of those dudes that has made a lot of people a lot of money.
Man, he's such a good dude. And, he lives here in Destin now. So I see him more now than I did when we worked together. And the conversations we have today are more about how to be a successful husband, a successful father, and a successful business person, because it's really hard to do all that stuff, right? And how do you do that? And I've learned a lot about balance from him. Trying to find that right balance. I'm not missing a baseball game. I'm not missing a volleyball game. I'm just not doing it. Because you can't get it back. You can't go backwards. So I love Greg Cook. I love Diane. They've done so much for me. Yeah.
Good people. It's funny, Tony, the second you said that, I'm sitting there rolling through the Rolodex, starting with Ed Lemko and rolling in from there as to who those people are. But it's funny. Greg Cook called me just the other day. I happen to be in the car with my daughter, will be 1 month away from being able to drive that car herself, which is terrifying. So I'm in the passenger seat, and I think she's got it. I'm like, can I take this call? She's like, yeah. And I'm thinking she knows that she's got to get in the left lane, go under the highway, and take the ramp up onto the highway. By the time we get to the light right before the highway, she's in the far right lane, right as Greg's like, hey buddy, what do you got going on? I'm like, hey, Greg, what's going on? And I look over at Abigail, and I'm like, hey, are you going to move over to get in that lane? She's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you have to cross 3 lanes of traffic and get in that left turn merge lane and panic. You should have seen the look on her face. I'm just like, hey, Greg, I'm going to need to call you back here. And he's laughing. He's like, you go spend time with her. We'll talk when we talk.
That's right.
And it's exactly who Greg is. So that was great.
He's such a good dude. And yeah.
Gus, you mentioned tourism and the military.
Yep.
And you at Emerald Coast Harley-Davidson, your whole crew, I remember when we were at your dealership, you brought a guest speaker to our 20 club, and it was a colonel from the military to give us some life lessons. And I was like, this is awesome. I still have that, was a coin, I think.
Challenge coin. Yep.
There you go. It was a challenge coin. I still have that on my dresser, which was awesome. But it's not just that they're next to you and you have good relationships with them. You are actively involved with them, with the community. When I was there, you were going to do a radio spot. So I went to the radio station with you, and you're on air on the radio station. You're always doing something for and with the community. So talk to us a little bit about that, Emerald Coast being that involved in the community, and why that's so important to you.
I think we have a responsibility, man. As a Harley dealer, it's a American iconic brand that's known around the world, that was built in a neighborhood in Milwaukee. I think we have a responsibility to be part of the community. That's what this brand was built on. It was built in a neighborhood by a couple dudes. And I feel like I don't do that stuff to sell bikes. You guys have heard me say this. We sell bikes because of it, but it's not my why. My involvement with the military when I first got here, Air Force Special Operations Command is here, and that's badass stuff, man. And that's the most deployed military base in our armed forces. over the last 20 years. Those guys are getting it done. And then Eglin Air Force Base is here as well, which is a training base. And we just jumped in, and I get calls from dealers in other military towns. And I think all of them do a good job, but, I get calls like, "Hey, how do you get involved? How do I do that?" And I'm like, "Man, you just got to do it." My wife and I, or somebody from our team, attended everything that we were invited to. We support any way we can, whether it be financially. I lend a facility out for retirement ceremonies, Silver Star ceremonies, all that kind of stuff, and I was fortunate to serve in an honorary commander program, um, at multiple levels, all the way up to the civic leader program that works with a 3-star general. I got to fly with a 3-star general from here on a military aircraft to the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. Then we spent a day at Cheyenne Mountain. Do either of you even know what that is?
I do know what that is.
I've
Only
been
because
in
you called
Cheyenne.
me that day.
Yeah, I've been in Cheyenne Mountain. I spent the day there. I had to leave my phone on the bus and do this additional background check stuff. And then from there, we went and spent a day at Space Command. And then we got on a C-130 and flew back to Herbert Field. Just like cool shit that none of my buddies in high school got to do. So, the military for me, and it is just I didn't serve in the military. My father did, and my wife was a Marine. I don't know if you guys knew that or not, but
Yeah.
so for me to be able to get involved and do things just as a proud American, that's it for me. And if they want to buy bikes here, that's cool. If not, it's not changing my perspective on that. And then as far as the community goes, like, man, the community really supports this store. And I got involved with the Chamber of Commerce. We have the fourth largest chamber in the state of Florida in this little tiny community. We got 3,000 active members. And I served on the board there for a few years. I was chairman of the board a few years ago. Sarah still sits on the board. So we always have some active folks in the organization that are involved in the community. I think I take it as a responsibility of mine as the owner of this business. I'm by far, you guys have both been here. There's not a business in our community that's more recognized than we are. And it's just from doing those kind of things. Like, just like every dealer in the country, I sponsored more softball teams, volleyball teams, cheerleading teams, all that stuff. And my thought on that is, no matter who they're going out to ask for donations from, none of them are as cool as the kid that comes in and says, "I got Harley." And then we show up, we go to football games, we do all that stuff. And, it's funny when I talk to people, I'm like, "Yeah, you can do that. Here's what you got to do." And it's just like, I had a chat with, we have a Friday morning huddle every Friday with the team, and we talk about hard work equals success. And I used the analogy last week. I'm like, man, I'd love to be a bodybuilder, look like a bodybuilder. I'm just not willing to do it. I'm just not willing to put the work in. It's not that I can't, I'm just not willing to do it. And we're talking about successes and wins out on the floor, and sales and profits are a byproduct of a great experience. And I'm like, what are you doing every day to better yourself? And I'm reading this book right now called Debrief to Win by a Top Gun pilot, and learning how to have an effective debrief, right? And we always focus on the negatives, but and then as an industry, like, oh, that guy didn't get it done, and I've tried to tweak my my thought process, like, well, why didn't we get it done? Was it an effort issue? Was it a knowing issue? What was it? And then have an effective debrief so we don't end up in that situation again. These last couple years, man, have been so challenging. It's really forced my mind, to work a little differently, and like, man, how do we do things different to get some different results without losing what makes our business unique? So,
Yeah. Along those lines, Gus, a few years back in one of our 20 clubs, you presented your 20 club with your priority maintenance program that you put together down there. And it was super cool. The stuff that you had made for it to be shown around the dealership was great. The program was really great. And I don't know, about a year later, I was in another 20 club and somebody was looking, to start a priority maintenance program. So I reached out to you. I'm like, hey, dude, is it okay if I, share some of the stuff that you have created so I can show this person what a good program looks like? And you're like, sure, no problem. And you said to me, you're like, hey, listen, in the future, dude, you don't even have to ask, because you can share anything that I do within my dealership, anything whatsoever, because what they can't replicate is me, my processes, and my people. So I'm not scared to show people all the things that I do, because it takes what goes on inside the walls to make it work, right? So I think I know the answer, but is this still true?
Absolutely. There's no secrets to success in this industry. There's no magic bullet. There's no secret sauce. It's all people. And, our job as the leadership team is, how do we bring those people up around us? And what I've learned as I get older, if I'm not 100% here, I can't give 100% out there. So, we opened another business 2 years ago, my tractor business.
Oh boy, you're going into number 6, which is, we had a great intro to that, Dansler.
Man,
which
you
was,
didn't send me the list
okay,
breakdown, bro. I would have stayed on track here.
Yeah, but so Sam, you can hit 6, because I just wanted the preface to how we're getting here, which is, it was hilarious.
Well, go ahead. I'll let you. I don't want to steal any of your thunder, bro.
Tony, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about. I know the story of the tractor, but I don't know the build up to the story of the tractor.
Yeah, no, that's it. It was just like you had a rough tractor shopping experience, right? And then let him go, because like most people, instead of just going to another dealership, Gus.
Yeah, what'd you do, Gus, after that shitty experience with tractors?
Well, I went to another dealership and got an equally shitty experience, and that prompted my wheels started. And look, I backed that up a little bit. There's great people in that industry, and it just runs a little different. I shouldn't say it. What's the right way to say this? It's just different than what we present to our customers at the Harley store, right? But operationally, it's pretty similar. People want to be treated the right way, regardless of what they're buying. And the Motorcycle Safety Foundation had reached out to me in maybe like 2021. We got a killer riding academy here that, when it's humming, we do 1,000 students a year. And, we work with the MSF on how to better the program. And I'm really proud of that, because it didn't exist before we got here. We stood that up in 2015. And, we worked hard on the conversion rate. How do we get the conversion rate up? And then it dipped again, and we realized it's people. So anyways, they reached out and said, hey, the fastest growing segment is dual sport. Would you be interested in piloting a dual sport riding academy? And all I heard is I can build Danny and Charlotte a dirt bike track. So literally that week I went to buy a tractor. I'm like, well, I didn't need a tractor. We talk about motivation and justification. I just needed a little bit of justification to buy a tractor, because my yard's the size of my office. I certainly don't need one at the house, but I needed to build a track. So I went to buy a tractor and was underwhelmed. Like, tractor's there, it's available. I called, yeah, it's here. I'm like, okay, cool. So I hook up the trailer to my truck, and I go up there, and I'm like, yeah, I'll take it. I'll pay for it. Here we go. Let's rock. And they're like, well, we got to get it put together. And I'm like, all right, well, I'll go grab a sandwich and I'll be back in an hour or two. No, it's going to be a couple weeks. I'm like, couple weeks? I thought it's here. Well, we got this, and it was just zero urgency. And it kind of reminded me of the Harley business back in the mid 90s. Like, yeah, if you don't know what you want, how the hell am I supposed to know what you want? And so I went to another store, and it was a similar experience. And they weren't rude or anything like that. It was just I just had a different expectation. So I was pissed. And I'm like, well, let me dig into the tractor business a little bit and see what brands are represented here and what brands aren't, and what the market looks like and what the opportunity is. And started a company and started reaching out to these manufacturers and as soon as you tell them you own the Harley dealer too, you instantly get a phone call back. And now we've been open for 18 months. I bought an old RV dealership, big service center, did a pretty significant refurb on the store. And I think the last time I checked, we got 16 or 17 different brands out there. We got, Mahindra tractors and Coyote tractors and JCB, which is a, big global company in construction and ag equipment and trailers and mowers and steel chainsaws and Echo chainsaws and Viper loaders and I mean it's really cool. It's called Big Gus Tractor and Equipment. When I said the name, people are like, that's what you're calling it? I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm calling it. And the cool thing about that store, for me, like, it's a pretty cool feeling to start something from scratch, literally from scratch. And now it's a profitable business. It's made money every month since month 3. We're not breaking the bank, but those guys are getting it done out there. We're getting ready to launch some other pieces to that business. I have some other opportunities. When we entered into that, I'm like, man, we're going to disrupt this market a little bit. And we have, and we're gaining market share. And, some of that heavy equipment, you look at, what percentage of the population plays in the power sports arena. It's 3% or whatever it is. When you drive home tonight, open your eyes and see how many pieces of construction equipment you see, or, that's on every corner. And then the service operation at its core, that's a service business. My store's a mile from the base entrance. There's so much equipment on base. It's mind-boggling. We're getting all that service business for that big heavy equipment. I got a mobile service truck. When I meet with the OEMs, they're like, hey, here's what the on-site warranty program looks, but you got to buy a mobile service truck. And I'm like, yeah, okay, go buy a mobile service truck. And so it's growing every month. I'm really proud of it. David is the guy that runs the store. David worked for one of the manufacturers, grew up in the power sports business in North Carolina, a young guy, had dreams of being an owner, but like myself at 35 years old or whatever it was, that would have never happened if somebody like Greg Cook didn't give me an opportunity. So we put a plan together, and David's buying some ownership over the course of a couple of years, and he's there, man. He works his ass off. He hustles. We're aligned. We've got great alignment, and it's just been a really cool experience to be able to do that. But when I did that, and this was another great learning lesson, I had a pontoon rental business too on Crab Island. I think you guys knew that. So we've been pretty entrepreneurial, man, just like looking at opportunities and plugging a little business in. I had that business and renting pontoons on Crab Island. It was cool. We built that up. I had boats custom made, and we developed that business and leased inventory to these other pontoon businesses and put it together for 3 years. And then I sold it and use that money to help get the tractor business rolling. But the biggest learning lesson for me in doing all that was kind of took my eye off the ball here at the Harley store, and it suffered. It suffered because of that, not just because of my lack of involvement, but you couple that with really challenging times when we all need to probably be here more and be more involved out in the showroom. So it suffered. But, the last 6 months for me have been pretty cool. We partnered with this social media guy, and I don't know if you guys saw that on any of our socials or not, but it's been game changing for us.
Hey, I got a question just to follow up on this, and I'm gonna let Dantzler hit you with his next question, which is 2 things, Gus, is that I heard. One, I love it because typically people that are afforded an opportunity like you, which is if you worked your ass off hard enough, you are going to have the keys to the castle eventually, right? So typically what I see from the right people are they turn right around and they try and emulate that again for somebody else, right? The best feeling in the world is being able to secure somebody else down the road. So I love that. Number 2, are your commercials as epic for the tractor store as they are for Harley?
Well, I'd love to tell you offline about this. Let's just say that there's a whole lot less rules and regulations with tractor and equipment manufacturers, and I'm reluctant to even say that. But our goal was to disrupt the business, and I think we're doing a fairly good job with that.
That's awesome.
It's us. Yeah,
I'll send-
no
I'll
OEMs
send you
holding you
guys
back,
some-
huh?
Yeah, I'll send you guys some of the material.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, from the pontoon rental.
But
and
I
then-
got one more point. You asked me about our community involvement. In starting these other businesses, part of that decision-making process that Sam and I go through when we decide to make those investments and spend that money to do that, I know I have credibility in the community, and they're going to support, or they're just going to give us an opportunity. And that helps with some of those decisions. When you're like, man, I know I can open this business in the community and I can leverage the credibility that we've built here at Emerald Coast Harley to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
So
It's a door open, right? And I think sometimes that's all you need to have a little momentum to launch these things.
yeah.
So you talked about boating. And I had a question that came up relative to that. You also mentioned that you were down, it suffered by you not being there, which you could look at some leadership things like what happened to leadership. Gus, you taught me years ago, you get what you fish for, and I've stolen that line. I always credit it to you because I love that line. But if you're not there to do the fishing, you're counting on somebody else to do the fishing, right? So I can see a bit of erosion by not having you there. But you are also a very avid boater. So I'm kind of curious, and this goes back to one of the questions we talked about before with younger people and motivating them because they're motivated differently than how we are, than how the three of us would want to buy. And it really starts off with the buyer and how the buyer wants to buy. So what's your take on how people are buying these days, and do modern sales approaches work? And then are they reciprocated by your sales team? If so?
Well, I don't think you, Tony, or I have the ability to motivate anybody. I think that lives inside of people. I think we have the ability to inspire some people, but I don't think you or I or Tony can motivate anybody. So I do think, and we've had conversations about this, and I got a 20 group meeting coming up, and I'm looking forward to having that conversation some more and having some thought-provoking discussion. I feel like our industry, our sales process hasn't changed in 2 decades, for the most part. I feel like we all got to the dance by doing this, and we're scared to step away. And I'm at a point now, and look, if you just look at numbers, the numbers support that. We got to figure out a different way. Everything you buy in your life, everything I buy, everything everybody buys has drastically changed over the last 10 years, certainly the last 5 years, and it's going to continue to change. But yet we still force people into this funnel, and our most precious commodity today is time. It takes a long time to buy a bike. It shouldn't, but it does. And some of those things we can control, some of those things we can't. The challenge is in the Harley business, it's so much emotion involved with buying a bike. It takes time. So how do we continue to evolve our sales process? I would love for customers to be able to do as much of it on their own as they can. Everything's posted already. Like I said, there's no secret sauce. I would love for customers to be able to appraise their own trades. They're doing it already the night before they come in. Hey, print out your trade work, your trade value, and then we'll just go out and look it over at that point. But, that's another point of negotiation that we can eliminate for the most part. That customer prints off their JD Power or their whatever they're looking for values. Bring them all in. Bring all those trade values in that you're going to print out tonight at your kitchen table. And then we'll just go out and make sure that what you checked is appropriate. Does it need tires? Well, you checked no, and yeah, it does. Did it fall over in the garage? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yet we're negotiating about trade values based on numbers that we're giving to them. So I don't have an answer yet, but you guys know me pretty well. Like, I'm going to try some stuff. And what I've learned in my working with Nunley, so back to the relationship with the military. The DoD has a program called the Skill Bridge, and it's an opportunity for folks that are retiring out of the military and moving into their next career field. Your business can go get vetted by the DoD, and they got to ask you some questions, and then they got to do a little background check on the owner to make sure you're not doing business with China or whatever. And then you can post jobs on the Skill Bridge website. And we've done it for some technicians here. We've got a couple technicians for the tractor store through that program. And the military pays them for 6 months. So they're not even on your payroll for 6 months. And you can almost look at it as a 6-month working interview, and the person that's coming out of the military can look at it as a 6-month, do I want to work for this organization? So it's worked well for us.
Interesting.
So my buddy Nunley, who's in the office right next door, he's a social media guy, and he's retiring out of the Air Force, and he's been Danny's baseball coach for the last 4 years. So we had a relationship. And he's also got 20 million followers across his 3 platforms, and he's a Harley fanatic. So we start talking. He's like, hey, can I do my Skill Bridge at your dealership? And I went, yeah, you can.
100%.
And he initially, and I can grab him. I'd love to get him on here with you guys. But what we've been able to do, we had 16,000 Facebook followers and no TikTok and like 800 Instagram followers. As you guys know, that's not my lane. Like, when I leave, I don't want you to know what I'm doing. I'm not posting pictures of my steak. I don't do any of that shit. And I don't want you to know what I'm doing unless I want you to know it. But I understand the power of social media. Today we got 300,000 followers. 6 months later, my transactions went from being down double digits. April, I was up 8%. May, I was up 16%. June, I was up 28%. These are year-over-year numbers. July, I was up 14%. August, I was up 17%. Bike sales grew from a 7% increase in May to a 10% increase in June to a 30% increase in July to a 33% increase in August.
Jeez.
So I'm all over that. He and I'm like, man, how do we keep this going? Because this guy's he's got a very, very, very lucrative career with this, and has big national brands that pay him to advertise for them. And by the way, I've also cut the bulk of my advertising spend, because he's like, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. So his 6 months came to an end on August 31st, and he and I worked out a partnership. And he's like, man, I'd love to find a way to, and he's learning about business, and, we're having great conversations, and we just launched it at the tractor store, and I'm excited about it. And it's definitely moving the needle for us here at the store. So,
those are impressive results, Gus. Those are big numbers in a world where Harley is going the other direction right now.
Well, Harley has contracted him to do things. So anyways, but that comes from a relationship, that comes from that community involvement, that came from having that that military involvement that we have here at the store. So that just kind of speaks to, those, what relationships mean, and how they can positively affect your business. But yeah, it's been an interesting couple years for all of us. I know you guys talk to folks every week. You're involved in 20 groups. You guys got your thumb on the pulse of the business. And back to that sales, how people buy, and how we're leading that next generation, because some of the leadership traits that we've had in the past aren't applicable today. I'm just talking about how you communicate with people today is different than it used to be. And that goes for customers, that goes for team members, that it goes through all that. And if you're not willing to adapt, I'm not saying abandon your core values as a leader, but you got to think about, I've got dudes on my staff that are in their 60s, and I got dudes that are on my staff that are in their early 20s, and you got to talk to them differently. You just do. And you guys know Tim, who works in my office. He's worked for us for years, and he's like, man, it's only like a 2-inch difference between a pat on the back and a kick in the ass, and you just got to figure out which one's applicable to each team member because everybody responds a little differently. So, yeah, it's been a real steep learning curve lately, navigating through these times, and then there's a whole bunch of things that none of us have any control over, and there's not much you can do with it. So you got to figure out how to adapt and overcome and maintain some profitability with these businesses.
You know, if you haven't already said it, Gus, because there's a lot of information you gave to the people to listen, but I want to ask you a broad question, and that is, what is the biggest lesson you've learned running a dealership and being a full-fledged, you own the business yourself? What's the biggest lesson you've learned?
I've learned so many lessons, and continue to every day. And I'm going to say this, and I don't mean anything by it other than what it is. Nobody loves your business as much as you do, and you can't expect them to. And that's not to say they don't care or that, it's not important to them. If this business doesn't work, I'm not feeding my family. There's only one, there's no other person that can say that, right? And so I think that's probably, and I don't mean that to be ugly. I've got some long time tenured team members that are senior leaders in my organization, and and I trust them with everything, and they put in 100% effort. But that's probably been the most the lesson that has hit me the hardest.
I like it.
I know I can still go on a sales floor. I can go to a sales meeting and I can move the needle. I can ratchet up that sense of urgency and just kind of push everybody outside of whatever comfort zone they're in. Not in an ass kicking way, but just in a, hey, this isn't acceptable. This isn't the standard. It's not what we're trying to achieve. Here's what you told me your goals are. Your actions aren't going to help you achieve those goals. Yeah, you're right, Gus. I got to pick it up a little bit.
Gus, if you're, let's just say your son or your daughter 10 years from now, they want to take over the business, does that advice change to them, or is it tweaked in any manner?
My kids already come to work at the store.
Not because you put a broom in their hand and you're like, get it done. they want to take over the business.
I think as parents, like I'm super aware of, like, there's no, you gotta have to work to achieve things. The lifestyle that you live is based on mom and dad's hard work, and there's no free rides. Like, it makes me feel good when Danny's like, hey Dad, I really like this die-cast truck in the motor clothes department. How many bikes do I got to wash to get this? That makes me feel good.
Yeah.
All right.
That's right.
Go see so-and-so and he'll let you know how many bikes you got to wash. But, and maybe they got me figured out. I don't know, but there's, Sam and I work really hard to understand, for them to understand, like, man, you got to work, whether it's sports, your schoolwork. And my son, he's like both my kids are great athletes. My son's a really good athlete, and I keep pushing him, and my wife's like, why are you pushing him so hard? Why are you pushing him so hard? And I'm like, just because, leave me alone. Right. He's got to be,
right. Because I don't have an answer. That's why.
Yeah. So anyways, I was watching that Joe Buck, special where he interviews people the other day, and he had Troy Aikman on there, and he's like, "Yeah, my dad treated me like a grown man since I was 6 years old." And I paused and I called Sam in. I'm like, "Come see, look, this is a Hall of Famer. His dad started riding him at 6. Danny's 10, right? He got a 4-year reprieve."
Love it.
You
So,
know,
anyways,
you know the funny
my
thing
kids,
about that, I don't. Go ahead.
my kids are here all the time at the dealership. They understand the role that Harley Davidson plays in our life, and that's pretty cool too. They both ride. I tracked down the very first Harley I ever owned, and I bought it back from the dude, and I gave it to Danny. And he
Oh,
came in the show. He came in the store not too long ago, and I had moved the bike out to the showroom. It's a '95 Softail Springer, and it's badass. Uh, and he came running in the office, and he's like, "Dad, why is my bike out there?" Because he knows like shit out there is for sale.
that's right.
He's like, why is my bike out there? And I'm like, we just put it out there on display. I'm not selling it. And he's like, all right, just want to make sure you're not selling my bike.
That is
Yeah,
awesome.
that's cool.
Gus, if you could give your younger self one piece of advice about business, what would that be?
Oh, I don't know, man. I think I've always focused on, I don't know. That's a tough one. You have to give me a minute to think about that. I've made a lot
Holy
of
Moses,
mistakes and
we stumped him.
Yeah, we got Gus quiet. I don't know.
That's good.
That's right.
no, I just had a bad connection. Of course I have an answer.
It's a tough
I don't know,
one,
man. That's
right?
tough.
It's a tough question.
That is tough. I think I don't know, man. I have to think about that for a minute. I've learned a lot of lessons and made a lot of mistakes, and to be able to pinpoint just one thing, um, you know, none of us can do any of this by ourselves. I think our people are our most valuable part of the organization. So I think just if I could go back, maybe I would have spent even more time than what I did trying to develop people. Um, I learned a good saying from somebody that I know locally here, and he's like, we excuse me, we hire for character. We train for talent, and like sometimes we forget about that training part. And in this book I'm reading about the debrief, focuses on you know a lot of times we just focus on the negative, and then maybe that leads to somebody not working in our organization any longer, and maybe we didn't focus as much on all these positive things. So I don't know, man. It's got to have something to do with people, Sam. I just can't articulate exactly what I'm feeling there, but just
I like
people.
I like that saying. I like that saying about hire for character and train for talent. And I think also along the way, particularly, I'm going to circle back to all the way where you started, which was what's different about selling Harleys versus talking to the girl at the bar, and right, it's just the attempts. It's just the volume of attempts, and you fail a lot, and that's something I tell Abigail. My daughter is very much into musical theater, and she tries out for so much stuff, and she doesn't get cast in a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, baby, that's just the way it goes. That's you're not going to get cast a lot. Ed Lemko used to say the best baseball players out there are batting 300, which means they're hitting the ball 3 out of every 10 times. And I think if you hire for talent, you're trying to hire the rock star, as opposed to hire for character and then teach them the talent on that. So I'm going to take yours and lump it in with mine. I like that, Gus.
Yeah, I think you know, especially when I talk to other friends of mine that are business owners and specifically in our industry, but everybody, I have some friends of mine that are in the tech business, and that's a very focused, specific job description. You either have these credentials or you don't. And it's challenging to build a team right now. It just is. And I always hung my hat on the environment here at the store, the juice, if you will. I hung my hat on that. And in today's environment, man, it's tough. It's really tough. And I don't, you know, you look inward and go, all right, am I not doing something that I did before? Do I need to change something that I've always done? You know, what is it? And so we're constantly tweaking with stuff. The challenge, like I said earlier, though, at the Harley store specifically, there's so much emotion tied to buying a Harley. And how do you streamline some of the processes, um, but maintain that touch with the customer where you can develop that? A big chunk of our business is people on vacation buying bikes. That's how we built this business. Our market here doesn't support the amount of bikes we sell, but when we sell hundreds of bikes to people annually that are on vacation that weren't planning on buying one, that requires a little more attention and a little more touch, and is not transactional at all. It's all emotion. So I don't know. You guys know me well enough. I'm going to keep tinkering with things until we find something that works. I'm really excited about the traction that we're getting with all this social stuff. I mean, we had, this is going to blow your mind. From March through August, we had 84 million content views.
Good
Damn.
grief.
84 million. Right? So I'm excited about that. We had a ride here in July or in June that was benefiting amputees. It was the biggest transaction day we've ever had at the store. We had 780 bikes in the ride. Called it the Missing Parts Ride. We raised $70,000 that day to donate back to amputees. So I feel like we got a lot of good, positive stuff working in an environment that we've all got our teeth kicked in the last 2 years. So I feel really good about where we're at. We're coming into the busiest season. October's typically our busiest month. We got the rally in October, and we're gonna kick that up a couple notches, and just getting our team dialed in, and I'm really excited about the future. I'm excited to have some new leadership at the motor company. I'm really excited to meet him next month at the dealer forum. So all good, positive stuff.
That's awesome. Love it, man. I love it. So, Gus, it's just Gus. Thank you so much for vibing with us. I knew this was going to be epic.
Yeah, it's funny, Tony, when you text me 2 weeks ago or whatever, you're like, it's time to have you on the podcast. And I'm like, who's this?
Ain't that something?
You can come to a meeting every now and again, Tony.
Hey, I do come to meetings. I don't live the leisure lifestyle like Dantzler over here. I actually got work and shit to do.
Not HD4, you don't. At least Sam pops in once a year or something. Sam and I worked when we started HD4. I was the chairman of that group for 5 years and spent a lot of time together and talked a lot about the group. And I'm really proud of what we did there, Sam. It continues to be a good solid group with dudes that come ready to work.
That is a great group. I was just talking to Mark Dukes last week as well, and then Glow I think has done a great job moderating.
She has.
You keep putting one meeting a year in Vegas, and I'm gonna keep seeing you. Right? That's just how that works. Leave Tony behind. I live in Steamboat. Oh, good for you.
Yeah. You guys go have fun in Vegas. Hey Gus, thanks for being on. For Gus and Sam, I'm Tony. This is GarageCast. Have a fantastic Tuesday, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
See you guys.